Full grind mode continues today. Today I'm picking out the Texas versus Arkansas game as the game that I'm going to predict, and the two teams in this matchup, I'm going to predict their seasons. I'm going to predict Texas season and I'm going to predict Arkansas season. Here we go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Golden Blue Dude, and if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, especially if you're a college football fan. That's what I do, college football videos every single day. Don't forget, guys, Golden Blue Dude does have a sponsor. It's called Tri-State Wood Sketch, and you can find them on the internet at www.tristatewoodsketch.com. He does amazing work. He can do any shape or size. All you have to do is send him the picture that you want on there, and if you mention that Golden Blue Dude sent you, he'll take 20% off. Today's game is going to be Texas at Arkansas. First, we'll start with Texas. Last year, they finished 7-3. Preseason ranking, as of right now, is 20th. So they are considered a top 25 team. Texas decided to fire Tom Herman. They didn't think he was quite reaching the expectations of Texas. So they bring in Steve Sarkisian. To me, I think Texas is a prestigious job. I don't think Steve Sarkisian has done anything to really earn the head coaching job at Texas, but he might prove himself. We'll see. And I will say the players are saying that they do prefer Sarkisian's straight-up forward approach as opposed to Tom Herman's fear tactics. That's what they said, fear tactics. Sarkisian himself will call the offense, and he brought in a whole new coaching staff. Texas does lose quarterback Sam Ehlinger, but 4 of the 5 offensive linemen are back, and quarterback Casey Thompson looks pretty good. I think he's the favorite to win the quarterback position. He had limited action last year, but he looked really good. 12 out of 17, that's 70.6%, 225 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 8 carries for 31 yards. That's 3.9 yards a carry. He does have some weapons as well. Starting with the running back. Keep your eyes on this guy. This guy could be a dark horse Heisman contender. Bijan Robinson, the running back. 86 carries for 703 yards, 8.2 yards a carry, and 4 touchdowns. Tom Herman did get criticized for not running the ball more with a guy like this. I don't blame him for that. He also has some weapons at wide receiver. Wide receiver Joshua Moore. 30 receptions for 472 yards and 9 touchdowns. Wide receiver Jordan Winnington, 21 receptions for 206 yards. Wide receiver Jake Smith, 23 receptions for 294 yards and 3 touchdowns. And they are majorly hyping Troy Omeire, 6'3" and 230 pounds, and they're saying he is a legitimate threat downfield. I think Texas' offense might be fine. They might take a slight step backwards, but the quarterback looks like he's going to do pretty good. We'll see if he can grow into that role. I think the offense will be just fine. Now on defense, they did lose some key players. Linebacker Jawan Mitchell and Joseph Asay. That's a big hit for the defense, but they also returned a lot of production on that side of the ball as well. On the defensive line, defensive end Jacoby Jones. He had 28 tackles, 11 by himself, and 1 sack. To go along with him on the other side, defensive end Moro Ajomo, 21 tackles, 10 by himself, 2 sacks, and 1 pass deflection. The interior of this defense, defensive tackle Keandre Coburn, 25 tackles, 13 by himself, 1 sack, and 2 pass deflections. The other defensive tackle, Devondre Sweat, 22 tackles, 6 by himself, 1 sack, 1 pass deflection, and 1 forced fumble. Now, even though they lost their 2 best tacklers, they still have some good linebackers at Texas. The LSU transfer linebacker Ray Thornton, he'll add some depth. But the big-time playmaker is linebacker Marvion Overshown. 60 tackles, 32 by himself, 1 sack, 2 interceptions, 7 pass deflections, and 2 forced fumbles. The dude is a playmaker. They also have linebacker Jalen Ford. He had 14 tackles, 5 by himself. David Benda, 19 tackles, 10 by himself, and 1 interception. And they also add linebacker Jalen Hullaby. He looks to be a big-time playmaker. Texas also has a very experienced secondary. They will not be weak in the secondary. Cornerback Deshaun Jamison, 31 tackles, 25 by himself, and 6 pass deflections. On the other side, cornerback Josh Thompson, 28 tackles, 19 by himself, 1 interception, and 3 pass deflections. Their safeties, safety BJ Foster, 41 tackles, 25 by himself, and 3 pass deflections. Safety Brendan Schooler, 2 tackles, 1 solo. And safety Jaron Thompson, 14 tackles, 10 by himself, 1 interception, and 1 pass deflection. So they should be fine at the safety position. Texas schedule, it's pretty loaded. They start off with a home game against Louisiana. I think that's a win. They go on the road against Arkansas. I'll predict that game later. The home game against Rice, win. Home game against Texas Tech, win. At TCU, I know it's a road game and TCU will be better, but I'm not really concerned with that road game for Texas. I'm going to call that a win. And they get Oklahoma in Dallas. That's going to be a loss. Oklahoma State at home, win. At Baylor, win. At Iowa State, I'm going to say that's a loss. Home game against Kansas, win. At West Virginia, I think that's going to be a loss. That's going to be a big-time game, and West Virginia is going to be better this year. It's going to be a loss for Texas. In the last game of the year, a home game against Kansas State. I think that's a win as well. So I'm looking at 8 or 9 wins, depending on how I predict that Arkansas game. Speaking of Arkansas, let's talk about them for a minute. Last year, they went 3-7, 6th in the SEC West. But the preseason ranking for Arkansas is 68th, so not a lot of faith in Arkansas. Let's look at their offense. They lost 2 players, but they were key players. Their quarterback, Felipe Franks, and wide receiver Mike Woods is gone to Oklahoma. All 5 offensive linemen are back. Quarterback KJ Jefferson, he'll probably earn the starting job. In limited action, he was 20 for 41, 48.8%, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Also had 28 carries for 67 yards, 2.4 yards a carry, and 2 touchdowns. Arkansas was not known for their offense last year, so that's not a oh no, what are we going to do? They do want to get better because last year they only converted 34% of their third downs. They have to get better. They were so close in a lot of those games. They don't score a ton of points, but they play good defense and they grind clock, but they have to convert those third downs more. Let's look at the weapons he has. They do get the Oklahoma transfer wide receiver Jaquan Crawford, and they say he looks really, really good. Go along with him, wide receiver Traylon Burks, 51 receptions for 820 yards and 7 touchdowns. Big-time playmaker. Also, wide receiver Evion Warren, 15 receptions for 278 yards and 3 touchdowns. They have some good depth at the tight end position as well, but the go-to guy for the tight end position is going to be Hudson Henry. Last year, 16 receptions for 92 yards and 1 touchdown. Right behind him is tight end Trey Knox, 7 receptions for 70 yards. Strength of this offense, no doubt, is the running game. And they get running back Traylon Smith back. Last year, 134 carries for 710 yards, 5.3 yards a carry, and 5 touchdowns. But to add depth, they have running back Dominic Johnson and hybrid wide receiver / running back Raheem Sanders. So don't look for anything spectacular on offense. Arkansas likes to grind the clock, shorten the game, and play good defense. They get 10 starters back from last year's defense. It is a big hit that Jonathan Marshall is gone, but I think they have enough on the defensive side of the ball. They'll be fine. Here's the front line. Defensive end Eric Gregory, 27 tackles, 12 by himself, 2.5 sacks, 1 interception. Defensive end Dorian Gerald, 5 tackles, 3 by himself, and 1.5 sacks. And the defensive tackles on the interior, Tarion Carter, 11 tackles, 4 by himself, and 1 pass deflection. Isaiah Nichols, 23 tackles, 6 by himself, half a sack, and 1 pass deflection. They have to generate more pressure on the quarterback. If they can do that, this defense can take a major step forward in 2021. Arkansas has a really good linebacking core as well. It starts with linebacker Grant Morgan. This is the leader of the defense. 110 tackles, 40 by himself, 2 sacks, 1 interception, which he returned for a touchdown, and 5 pass deflections. Also, linebacker Bumper Poole, 101 tackles, 40 by himself, a half a sack, and 5 pass deflections. Linebacker Greg Brooks Jr., 39 tackles, 22 by himself, 2 interceptions, 1 of those he ran back for a touchdown, and 1 pass deflection. I do think Arkansas will have one of the better secondaries in the SEC. This is a talented bunch of defensive backs. Let's start with the cornerbacks. Cornerback Hudson Clark, 47 tackles, 32 by himself, 3 interceptions, and 3 pass deflections. On the other side, quarterback Monteric Brown, 31 tackles, 20 by himself, 6 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, and 1 interception. And there's those safeties. They have some good safeties. Safety Jalen Catalon, 99 tackles, 51 by himself, 2 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions, 1 of those he returned for a touchdown, and 4 pass deflections. Safety Joe Boucha, 60 tackles, 18 by himself, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 2 interceptions, and 3 pass deflections. So the linebackers and the secondaries like to pick you off, and they like to take it to the house. Between the two groups, altogether 4 pick sixes. That's impressive. Let's look at Arkansas' schedule. They start off with the home game against Rice, win. Then the game against Texas, which I'll predict here in just a second. After that, home game against Georgia Southern, win. And they get Texas A&M in Arlington. That's a loss. This is the start of a tough 3-game stretch because after that, at Georgia, that's a loss. At Ole Miss, that's a loss. But after that, they get a home game against Auburn. I'm going to say that's a win. Arkansas Pine Bluff, of course, that's a win. Bye week, and they get Mississippi State at home. That's a win. Then another tough 2-game stretch. At LSU, I have that as a loss. At Alabama, I have that as a loss as well. Then to finish off the season, a home game against Missouri. I'm going to say they finish the season with a win. I do have Arkansas getting to a bowl because right there, that's 6 wins. Now for the Texas-Arkansas game itself. It's early in the season. It's at Arkansas. I do think Texas has more talent, but I think Arkansas's defense steps up, picks off that young quarterback several times, grinds that clock, converts third down more than what they did last year, and I think Arkansas will be able to ice the game late in the fourth quarter. So my prediction for the Texas-Arkansas game, I have Texas 21, Arkansas 24. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be a close game. I have Arkansas with the mild upset over Texas. So with that prediction, I have Texas going 8-4 and Arkansas 7-5. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.